Hey there. Tonight, we're traveling back to 650 AD, a time they never taught you in school. You are Kaimana, a Polynesian navigator from Rapa Nui. You've spent your entire life reading the stars, feeling the pulse of ocean currents beneath your double-hulled canoe. But tonight you made a mistake. A storm pushed you south, further south than any human has ever traveled. And now, as the first rays of dawn break across an impossible horizon, you see something that shouldn't exist. Ice. Endless, white, brutal ice. Your crew of 40 warriors and navigators huddles behind you, shivering in clothes designed for tropical warmth. 3 months ago, you left home, seeking new fishing grounds. Instead, you've discovered a frozen hell at the bottom of the world. And you're not alone. Another expedition, rivals from a distant archipelago, arrived weeks before you. They've gone mad from the cold, from the darkness, from the hunger. Now, as you step onto the crunching ice shelf, obsidian blade in hand, you realize something terrible. Only one crew will survive long enough to escape this place. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let me tell you what happened when Polynesians reached Antarctica, and how warfare erupted at the edge of the world. You stand at the stern of your vessel, the Hokulea's daughter, watching ice formations drift past like floating mountains. Your fingers, once brown and strong, now carry a bluish tint you've never seen before. The cold isn't like anything your people have words for. It doesn't just touch your skin. It crawls inside your bones and nests there, making every movement a negotiation with pain. Your crew of 40 souls has been reduced to 37. 3 men died during the storm that pushed you here, swept overboard when waves tall as palm trees smashed across your double hulls. You remember their screams, how they were swallowed by water so cold it turned black. Their families back on Rapa Nui will never know what happened. They'll wait for your return, watching the horizon. And you'll never come. The Antarctic coast rises before you now. A wall of ice cliffs that gleam blue and white under a sun that refuses to set properly. It's been weeks since you've seen true darkness. The sun just circles the horizon, never quite disappearing. And this endless twilight has begun to fray your crew's minds. Men see things in the ice, faces, spirits, warnings carved by gods. You've ordered the canoe beached on a relatively flat section of ice shelf. Your navigator, Makoa, "We should sail north," he whispers through cracked lips, "before the sea freezes completely." But you can see it in his eyes, the same thing you feel. You're all too weak to make the journey back. Not yet. You need food, rest, and shelter before attempting the return voyage. As your crew drags the canoe onto the ice, you spot something that makes your heart stop. Footprints. Human footprints in the snow. Fresh ones. You follow the footprints with Makoa and 5 warriors. Each step through the snow requires effort your weakened body barely possesses. Your leather sandals, designed for hot volcanic rock, offer no protection against the ice. Your feet went numb an hour ago, which you've decided is a blessing. Pain you can handle. The absence of sensation feels like a preview of death. The footprints lead inland, away from the coast, toward a rocky outcropping that breaks through the ice like a tooth. The stone is black, volcanic, like home, and for a moment your heart aches so badly you have to stop walking. You think of your daughter, Leilani, who was 7 years old when you left. You promised her you'd return before the season of tuna migration. That was 4 months ago. "Kaimana," Makoa hisses. He's pointing at the rocks. You see them now, A camp. Crude shelters made from sealskins stretched over driftwood frames. A fire pit with bones scattered around it. Seal bones, bird bones, and something else. Something that makes your stomach turn. Human bones. Gnawed clean. And then you see the people themselves. 8 of them, maybe 9, emerging from behind the rocks. They're Polynesian, like you, but from which island you can't tell. Their tattoos are different, patterns you don't recognize. They're gaunt, skeletal, their eyes sunken deep into skulls. They wear sealskins clumsily stitched together, and they carry weapons. Sharpened bones, rocks lashed to driftwood handles. One man holds what looks like a human femur, its end sharpened to a point. The leader, a woman with a scarred face and missing fingers on her left hand, raises her makeshift spear and screams something in a dialect you barely understand, but the meaning is clear. This is their territory, and you're not welcome. The scarred woman speaks again, and this time you catch enough words to understand. Her dialect is from the Cook Islands, you think, though her accent has been warped by months of isolation. "Go back," she rasps, her voice like stones grinding together. "This is our sealing ground, our survival place. You leave now or we kill you." You raise your hands slowly, showing empty palms. "We mean no harm," you call back, trying to keep your voice steady. "We were blown south by storms. We only need food and rest before we sail north." The woman laughs, a terrible, broken sound. "North?" She gestures wildly at the ice around you. "There is no north anymore. The sea will freeze. It always freezes when the sun starts to dip. You came too late." "Too late!" Her voice rises to a shriek. One of her men, a young warrior with both ears blackened by frostbite, steps forward. He's shaking, whether from cold or rage you can't tell. "They have a canoe," he says to the woman. "A good canoe. We take it. We can escape, before freeze." Your hand moves to your blade now. Makoa and your warriors spread out slightly, forming a defensive line. You fought before, tribal disputes, raids for resources, but always in warm waters, on familiar ground. Here you're weak, cold, and fighting for your very survival against people who've already crossed the line into madness. "We can share the seals," you offer, desperate now. "We can work together. More hands mean better hunting." The scarred woman tilts her head, considering. For a moment you think she might agree. Then she notices something that makes her eyes widen. She's looking past you, back toward your beached canoe. 40 of you," she whispers. "How many? How much food?" Your blood runs cold. She's not counting allies. She's counting rations. The attack comes without warning. The young warrior with blackened ears lunges forward, his bone club swinging toward Makoa's skull. You react on instinct, shoving Makoa aside and bringing your obsidian blade up in a sweeping arc. The blade catches the warrior's wrist, and blood, shockingly red against the white snow, sprays across the ice. The young man screams and stumbles backward, clutching his arm. But the damage is done. The scarred woman shrieks a battle cry, and her entire group charges. 8 against 6. The odds aren't terrible, but your men are weak, cold, and fighting in terrain they don't understand. You parry a bone spear thrust from a skeletal man who moves with surprising speed despite his condition. Your blade slides along the spear shaft and catches him in the shoulder. He goes down hard, cracking his head on the ice. You don't have time to see if he's dead, because another attacker is coming at you from the right. This one is older, maybe 50, with frost-blackened toes that leave bloody prints in the snow as he runs. He swings a rock lashed to driftwood, and you barely duck in time. The weapon passes so close to your head, you feel the wind of its passage. You counter with a low slash that opens a gash across his thigh. He collapses, screaming. Around you, your warriors are holding their own, but barely. Makoa has his back against a rock, fighting off 2 attackers with a driftwood staff he grabbed from the enemy camp. One of your men, a fisherman named Kai, goes down with a bone knife in his gut. You watch him fall, watch the red blooms spread across his tattered cloak, and you know he won't get back up. The scarred woman circles you now, her bone spear held low. "Your canoe," she hisses. "Give us the canoe, and we let the rest live." She's lying. You can see it in her eyes. You don't answer. Instead, you feint left, and when Hina commits to blocking that direction, you spin right and bring your blade across her spear shaft. The bone splinters and breaks. For a moment, she stares at the ruined weapon in shock, and in that moment, you strike. Your blade opens a shallow cut across her forearm, not deep enough to kill, but enough to make her drop the spear. She stumbles backward, and you press your advantage, kicking the broken spear away and bringing your blade to her throat. "Call them off," you command, your voice harsh. "Now." For a heartbeat, you think she'll refuse. Her eyes are wild, feral. But then she sees something in your face. The willingness to kill, perhaps, or simply the exhaustion of a man who's already lost too much. And she screams, "Stop!" Stop fighting. The combat ends as suddenly as it began. Both groups separate, panting, bleeding, staring at each other with hatred and fear. You count your losses. Kai is dead, bleeding out in the snow. 2 others are wounded, though not fatally. The enemy has lost 3. The man with the skull injury isn't moving, and another is curled in a ball, clutching his opened stomach. The silence is broken only by heavy breathing and the distant calls of seabirds you didn't know could survive in this cold. "Here's what happens," you say, your blade still at Hina's throat. "We share the seals. We share the shelter. When the ice melts enough for sailing, we leave together. Both crews. No more fighting." You press the blade slightly, drawing a trickle of blood. "But if you try to take our canoe, if you harm my people again, I will gut you and leave you for the ice." Hina's eyes narrow, calculating. You can see her weighing her options, measuring her crew's strength against yours. Finally, she nods. "Agreed," she whispers. You don't believe her for a second. You release Hina slowly, stepping back but keeping your blade ready. Your warriors gather the wounded, while Hina's people drag their dead away from the blood-soaked snow. The dying man with the stomach wound won't last the night. You've seen enough battlefield injuries to know that. He moans softly, calling for someone named Makana, probably a wife or mother, thousands of miles away. Makoa approaches, limping from a blow to his knee. "This is madness," he whispers. "We can't trust them. They'll kill us in our sleep." "I know," you reply quietly. "That's why we don't sleep. Not all of us. Not at the same time." You turn to your crew. Shifts. 3 awake at all times. Eyes on them always. The rest of the day is spent in tense coexistence. Hina's people show you the sealing grounds, a rocky beach where fat seals haul out to rest. Your men watch in amazement as the scarred woman demonstrates how to club a seal to death, how to skin it, how to render its blubber for fuel and food. It's brutal work, and the seal's cries are disturbingly human-like, but hunger overcomes squeamishness. That night, you eat cooked seal meat for the first time. It's greasy, fishy, and tough, but it's the first hot meal you've had in weeks. The fat warms you from inside, and for the first time since arriving in this frozen hell, you feel a tiny spark of hope. Maybe you can survive this. Maybe. Hina sits across the fire from you, her wounded arm wrapped in seal fur. She's staring at you with an unreadable expression. "Where are you from?" she asks finally. "Rapa Nui," you answer. "Easter Island." "You?" "Rarotonga, Cook Islands." She pokes at the fire with a stick. "We've been here 4 months. Came for legendary fishing grounds. Found only ice and death." 4 months, you repeat, letting that sink in. 4 months of cold, of hunting, of slowly losing humanity. You look at her missing fingers, at the human bones half buried in snow near the camp. "How many were you when you arrived?" Hina's face goes blank. 23. She doesn't elaborate, and you don't push. The math is simple and horrifying. 23 down to 8, 15 dead, and some of them clearly didn't die from the cold alone. Sleep doesn't come easy that night, despite your exhaustion. You lie in one of the sealskin shelters, surrounded by 3 of your men who take the first watch. The shelter stinks of old blood and seal fat, but it blocks the wind, and that's all that matters. Outside, you can hear the ice cracking and groaning, a sound like the earth itself is in pain. Around midnight, or what you think is midnight, though the sun barely dips below the horizon, you hear screaming. You bolt upright, blade in hand, and rush outside. One of Hina's men is thrashing in his sleeping furs, shrieking about spirits in the ice. His eyes are rolled back in his head, foam flecking his lips. 2 of his companions try to hold him down, but he fights with supernatural strength. "The darkness," he screams, "the darkness that eats. The faces in the ice. They want in. They want in." Hina emerges from her shelter, and without hesitation she strikes the man across the face with her good hand. Once, twice, 3 times. The screaming stops. The man curls into a ball, sobbing. "The sun will rise," Hina says quietly, though you notice her own hands are shaking. "The sun always rises here. Always." But you wonder, when the season changes, when true darkness finally comes to Antarctica, what happens to the minds of men who were never meant to endure it? The days that follow settle into a brutal routine. You wake in the eternal twilight, eat seal meat, hunt more seals, repair your shelters against the wind, and sleep in shifts while watching Hina's people and being watched in return. The cold becomes a constant companion, no longer shocking but simply a fact of existence, like breathing or hunger. Your body adapts in ways you never thought possible. Your skin develops a strange, leathery quality. Your fingers and toes go numb for hours at a time, and you learn to work through the numbness, trusting muscle memory over sensation. 2 of your men develop frostbites so severe their toes turn black and fall off. You heat your blade in the fire and cauterize the wounds, and their screams echo across the ice until you stuff sealskin into their mouths to muffle the sound. Hina proves to be a resourceful, if unpredictable, ally. She knows this frozen world better than you do, knows which ice is safe to walk on and which will crack beneath you, knows how to read the weather in the clouds and the behavior of seals. She teaches you how to render seal blubber into oil for lamps, how to make needles from bone to repair torn clothing, how to build ice walls to block the worst of the wind. But you also catch her watching your canoe with hungry eyes. And twice you've seen her men gathered together, whispering, falling silent when you approach. On the 8th day, Makoa pulls you aside. "The ice is thickening," he says, pointing at the ocean. See how the water barely moves? In another week, maybe 2, the bay will freeze solid. We need to leave, now. You look at the sea, then at Hina's camp, then at your weakened crew. We're not strong enough yet, you reply. We need more food, more blubber for the voyage. If we wait, Makoa says, we'll never leave. That night, you call your crew together away from Hina's people. The wind howls across the ice as you huddle behind an ice wall, speaking in low voices. Makoa is right, you tell them. We need to leave soon. But if we announce our departure, Hina's people will try to take the canoe. We've seen them watching it. They know it's their only chance to escape. Your second in command, a warrior named Keone, spits into the snow. So we kill them first, in their sleep, quick and clean. Several men nod in agreement. You shake your head. 8 of them, 36 of us. We'd win the fight, but we'd lose men. Men we need to sail the canoe home. You pause, thinking. We leave at dawn. No warning. We load the canoe tonight, quietly. Take all the seal meat we can carry. When the sun rises, we sail. And if they stop us, Makoa asks. You touch your obsidian blade. Then we fight, but we give them no time to prepare, no time to plan. We move fast and we move together. The men agree, though you can see the fear in their eyes. They're afraid of the sea, of the voyage home through freezing waters, of storms and ice, and the distance they must cover. But they're more afraid of staying here, of slowly going mad like Hina's people, of turning into something less than human. You spend the next hours quietly preparing. Under the guise of checking the canoe for damage, you and your men load provisions, seal meat wrapped in skins, bladders of rendered blubber, extra sealskins for warmth. You work in the dim twilight, moving silently, watching Hina's camp for any sign they've noticed. They haven't, or if they have, they're pretending not to. Just before dawn, one of Hina's men walks toward the canoe. Your heart stops. This is it. The moment everything falls apart. The man approaching is young, maybe 18, with frostbite scars across his cheeks. You recognize him. He was one of the fighters from the first battle, though he hung back and didn't engage directly. He stops 10 paces from the canoe, staring at the loaded supplies. For a long moment, nobody moves. You're crouched behind the hull, blade drawn, ready to spring. Your warriors are positioned around the canoe, weapons ready. The young man looks at the supplies, looks at you, and you see the exact moment understanding dawns in his eyes. You're leaving, he says flatly. Without us. You rise slowly, keeping your blade visible. Yes. We'll die here. His voice is emotionless, matter of fact. Probably, you agree. There's no point in lying. But if we take you with us, the canoe will be too heavy, too slow. We'll all die. The young man nods slowly, processing this. You expect him to scream, to alert the camp, to attack. Instead, he asks, "Can I come? Just me. I'm small. I won't take much room. I can paddle. I can work. Please." His voice breaks on the last word, and suddenly he's not a warrior anymore. He's just a boy, far from home, terrified of dying alone in the ice. Your heart clenches. You think of your daughter, of someone asking her for mercy in a frozen land. But you also think of your crew, of the impossible journey ahead, of the calculations of survival that leave no room for compassion. "I'm sorry," you say, and you mean it. The boy's face hardens. "Then I'll wake them. I'll tell them you're leaving. If I die here, you all die too." He opens his mouth to scream, and you have perhaps 1 second to decide. Kill him and alert the camp anyway with his dying cries, or let him come and risk everyone's survival. Makoa moves before you can decide. He lunges forward and claps his hand over the boy's mouth, muffling the scream before it can start. The young man struggles, but Makoa is stronger, even in his weakened state. He drags the boy backward toward the canoe, toward you. "Kill him or take him," Makoa hisses. "Decide now." You look at the boy's terrified eyes above Makoa's hand. You look at your canoe, at the loaded supplies, at the freezing ocean beyond. The calculation is brutal. One more person means less food per person, slower sailing, higher risk of the canoe being overwhelmed by ice or waves. But it also means one more paddler, one more set of hands to bail water, one more body to share warmth. And it means your daughter might see you return as a man who showed mercy, not a monster who let a boy die. "Take him," you say quickly. But he paddles. Every day, and he gets half rations until we're clear of the ice. You point at the boy. You understand? Half rations. And if you cause any trouble, any at all, you go overboard. Agreed? Makoa releases him slowly. The boy gasps for air, then nods frantically. "Yes, yes, thank you, thank you. I'll work hard. I won't be trouble, I promise. Thank you." "What's your name?" you ask. "Tao," he says. "My name is Tao. Get in the canoe, Tao. Stay quiet." You turn to your crew. "Everyone aboard, now. We have maybe 10 minutes before someone notices we're gone." Your men scramble onto the vessel, taking their positions at the paddles. You do a final check of the supplies, the lashings, the hulls. Everything seems secure. You push off from the ice shelf, and the canoe slides into the black water with barely a splash. Behind you, Hina's camp remains silent. So far. The paddles bite into the water, and the canoe begins to move. The rhythm is automatic, learned from childhood. Left, right, left, right. But the water is different here. It's thick, almost syrupy with cold, and full of small ice chunks that bump against the hulls. Each impact sends a shudder through the vessel, and you worry about the structural integrity of wood that's been tested beyond its design. You're 50 yards offshore when the screaming starts. You don't look back. You don't need to. You can hear Hina's voice, ordering her people to pursue. But they have no canoe, no way to follow except by swimming, and no one survives more than minutes in water this cold. "Faster!" you shout to your crew. "Dig deep!" Every paddle counts. The men respond with a burst of speed, though you can see the effort costs them. Their arms shake. Their breathing comes in ragged gasps. Tao paddles with frantic energy, as if trying to prove his worth with every stroke. Behind you, the screaming continues, and now it's mixed with another sound, splashing. You risk a glance backward. Hina is in the water. She's actually in the water, swimming after you with powerful strokes, her scarred face twisted in fury. 2 of her men are with her, but they're already falling behind, their movements becoming sluggish as the cold saps their strength. Hina keeps coming. Her strokes are wild, desperate, but she's closing the distance. 50 yards, 40, 30. You can see the madness in her eyes, the absolute refusal to accept defeat, to accept that she's going to die here while you escape. At 20 yards, her strokes begin to falter. At 15 yards, she goes under for the first time. She surfaces, still reaching toward your canoe. At 10 yards, she goes under and doesn't come back up. The silence after Hina disappears is worse than the screaming. Your crew paddles mechanically, staring straight ahead, not speaking. Even Tao has gone quiet, his paddle strokes regular but subdued. You want to say something, to justify the decision to leave them, to explain that survival demands cruelty sometimes. but the words stick in your throat. You didn't push Hinna into the water. You didn't kill her. But you might as well have. And you know that. And your crew knows that. And that knowledge sits heavy in the canoe, like a 38th passenger made of stone and guilt. 3 hours into the voyage, the wind picks up. It comes from the south, from the heart of Antarctica, and it brings with it a cold so intense it makes the previous weeks feel like summer warmth. Ice forms on the canoe's outriggers, on the sail, on the paddles themselves. Men's beards become frozen masses, their breath creating ice crystals that clink when they fall. Makoa begins to shiver violently. You recognize the signs. He's entering the dangerous stage of cold where the body starts to shut down, where death becomes a real and immediate possibility. You order him wrapped in every available sealskin, packed in among the other men so their body heat can warm him. He protests weakly, but he's too cold to fight. By the 6th hour, you can no longer feel your hands on the steering oar. You guide the canoe by muscle memory alone, trusting instincts developed over decades of navigation. The sun, that cursed sun that never properly sets, seems to mock you with its weak, cold light. The seal surfaces nearby, its dark eyes watching the canoe pass. Tao raises his paddle, perhaps thinking to kill it, but you shake your head. You need every hand paddling, every moment of speed you can get. The seal watches a moment longer, then dives, disappearing into the black water. You wonder if that's the last seal you'll ever see. On the 2nd day at sea, one of your crew, a fisherman named Lono, starts seeing things. He points at waves, insisting they're faces of the drowned, calling to him, asking him to join them in the cold water. When you tell him there's nothing there, he becomes agitated, arguing that you're lying, that you're trying to keep the spirits for yourself. By evening, Lono tries to jump overboard. 3 men tackle him, pinning him to the bottom of the canoe while he screams about voices and hands reaching up from the depths. You have no choice but to bind him with rope, tying his hands and feet, stuffing sealskin into his mouth to muffle his cries. He's ice mad, Makoa whispers. He's recovered somewhat from his hypothermic episode, though he's still weak. The cold breaks minds. I saw it with Hina's people. You nod grimly. You've seen it too. The way prolonged cold exposure combined with stress and fear can shatter a person's grip on reality. The question is, how many others are close to breaking? You study your crew, looking for signs. Several men have the 1,000-yard stare, eyes focused on nothing, paddling automatically. Others mutter to themselves, conversations with absent friends or family. The 3rd day brings a new horror, a massive storm. You see it coming from the south, a wall of black clouds that devours the horizon. The waves begin to build, growing from gentle swells to house-sized mountains of water. You've sailed through storms before, but never in water this cold, never with a crew this weakened. "All hands secure," you shout. "Lash everything down. Prepare for rough water." The first wave hits like a fist from an angry god, lifting the canoe 10 feet up, then dropping it with a crash that splinters one of the outrigger supports. Water floods the hulls, and men scramble to bail with whatever containers they have. This, you think, is how we die. The storm lasts 14 hours. 14 hours of being lifted and dropped by waves that seem determined to break the canoe into kindling. 14 hours of bailing water with numb hands, of watching the horizon disappear and reappear, of wondering with each wave if this will be the one that capsizes you. Tao saves your life. A wave catches the steering oar and rips it from your frozen hands, and before you can react, the boy dives across the canoe and catches it. He's swept halfway overboard in the process, dangling over the black water, but Keone grabs his legs and hauls him back. Together, you and Tao wrestle the oar back into position. "Thank you," you gasp, and he nods, unable to speak through chattering teeth. When the storm finally breaks, you count your losses. 2 men are gone, swept overboard in the chaos. One is Lono, who must have worked free of his bindings during the worst of the waves. You'll never know if he jumped or fell. The canoe has lost both outriggers, making it barely seaworthy. Half your supplies are gone, washed away by the waves. 33 men remain. 33 exhausted, hypothermic, terrified men in a damaged canoe in the middle of the Antarctic Ocean, with limited supplies and no clear way home. Makoa does a navigation check, using the stars, now finally visible as night truly falls. He calculates your position, then looks at you with stricken eyes. "The storm pushed us east," he says, "away from our route home. We've lost days, maybe weeks." You look at the remaining seal meat. Maybe enough for 3 days if you ration strictly. You look at your damaged canoe, at your depleted crew, at the endless ocean stretching in all directions. "We keep sailing north," you say. "We make for warmer waters. We hunt. We survive." But for the first time since leaving Rapa Nui, you truly doubt you'll ever see home again. The days blur together. You sail north by northwest, following the stars, following instinct, following hope. The temperature gradually warms, from unbearable to merely awful, from deadly to just dangerous. Ice stops forming on the canoe's rigging. Men stop losing fingers and toes to frostbite. These small victories feel like miracles. But hunger becomes the new enemy. The seal meat runs out on day 5. You try fishing with bone hooks and sinew line, but the fish in these waters are strange, pale, almost translucent things that your crew eyes with suspicion. Still, hunger overcomes fear, and you eat them raw, there being no fuel for cooking fires. On day 7 you spot birds, seabirds, circling in the distance. Where there are birds, there might be land, or at least rocks where seals rest. You alter course, chasing the birds, and your gamble pays off. A small, rocky island emerges from the sea, barely more than a pile of black volcanic stones, but it's solid ground. The first solid ground in over a week. Your crew cheers weakly as you beach the canoe. Men stumble onto the rocks, kissing the stone, weeping with relief. You organize a quick survey of the island. It's tiny. You can walk its circumference in 10 minutes. But it has seals. Fat seals basking on the rocks, unafraid because they've never encountered humans before. The hunt is almost pathetic in its ease. You simply walk up to the seals and club them. They barely react until it's too late. Your men butcher 3 seals on the spot, eating the raw blubber and organs with desperate hunger. It's grotesque, but it's survival. That night, you sleep on rock instead of in a rocking canoe. It's uncomfortable, but it's still. Gloriously, blessedly still. For the first time in days, you sleep without dreaming of drowning. You spend 3 days on the island. 3 days of eating, resting, and repairing the canoe as best you can. Without proper tools, you can't replace the outriggers, but you reinforce the hull with driftwood lashed with sinew and strips of sealskin. It's crude work, but it might hold. On the second day, Makoa and Keone explore the island more thoroughly and make a disturbing discovery. On the far side, hidden among rocks, they find evidence of previous human habitation. Not recent, the remains are old, weathered by years of wind and salt spray, but unmistakably human. They bring you to see it. Bones, scattered across the rocks. Lots of bones. And carved into a flat stone surface, scratched with what must have been tremendous effort, is a message in a Polynesian dialect you barely recognize. We tried to go home. The sea would not let us. Forgive us for what we became. Below the message are tally marks. You count them. 73 marks. 73 days, perhaps. Or 73 deaths. There's no way to know. Others came before us, Makoa says quietly. Others went too far south and couldn't get back. You stare at the bones, at the desperate message, and you think about Hina's people, about the human bones in their camp, about the madness in their eyes. You think about how quickly civilization falls away when survival is the only law. We're not them, you say firmly. We're going home. And we're doing it as men, not monsters. Keone spits on the rocks. Easy to say when our bellies are full of seal. He's right, of course, but you don't say that. Instead, you order everyone back to the canoe. You've rested enough. Staying longer risks complacency, risks the creeping comfort that might make leaving impossible. On the fourth morning, you sail away from the island of bones, heading north into unknown waters. 2 weeks north of the island, you encounter your first sign of civilization. It's not a ship or a settlement. It's debris, wooden planks, woven matting, pieces of what was once a canoe. The wood is fresh enough that it couldn't have been in the water for more than a few months. Your crew hauls some of the debris aboard, examining it. The construction is Polynesian, but the style is different from yours. Broader planks, different lashing patterns, and on one piece, carved into the wood, is a symbol you recognize, the emblem of the Marquesas Islands, nearly 1,000 miles from your home. There are others, Tao says, his young voice full of wonder and hope. Others who sailed south and are trying to return. But Makoa shakes his head grimly. Others who didn't make it. This is wreckage, not a vessel. They sank. Everyone aboard is dead. The mood in the canoe darkens. If another crew, perhaps stronger, better supplied than you, couldn't survive the journey home, what chance do you have? You see the doubt creeping into your men's eyes, see them calculating their own odds. That night, you ration the remaining seal meat more strictly. You estimate you have maybe 5 days of food left, assuming no more storms, no more accidents. 5 days to find more food or reach populated waters. The stars are different now. You're far enough north that you can see constellations you recognize from home voyages. Makoa uses them to confirm your position. You're roughly at the latitude of southern New Zealand, though far east of those islands. If you can continue north for another week, you'll reach the great current that flows toward Polynesia. 1 week. You have 5 days of food and need 1 week of sailing. The math is simple, and it's terrifying. On day 3 of your final supply stretch, Keone approaches you with a terrible suggestion. He waits until you're alone at the steering oar, then speaks quietly so others won't hear. The weak ones, he says bluntly. The injured. The sick. They eat but they can't paddle effectively. They're dead weight. You know exactly what he's proposing. The thought makes your stomach turn, but you can't deny the brutal logic. You have 3 men who are barely functional. One with infected frostbite wounds that smell of rot. Another whose mind has partially broken, muttering constantly but unable to follow commands. a third who took a blow to the head during the storm and hasn't been right since. No, you say firmly. Kaimana. I said no. You meet his eyes. We don't murder our own. Not for food, not for anything. The moment we do that, we become like them. You don't need to specify who you mean. The bones on the island spoke clearly enough. Keone studies you for a long moment. If we all die because you wanted to feel honorable, your daughter grows up fatherless. Is your honor worth that? The words hit like a physical blow. You think of Leilani, of her smile, of the promise you made to return. You think of the impossible choice. Betray your humanity to possibly save your crew, or hold to your principles and possibly condemn everyone. We fish harder, you say finally. We catch birds if we can. We find another way. Keone nods slowly and walks away, but you can see he's not convinced. And worse, you can see other men watching the exchange, can see the same calculations in their eyes. That night, you start sleeping with your blade close and one eye open. You've led your crew through ice and storms, but now you face something more dangerous. Desperation-fueled mutiny. The next morning, the man with infected frostbite dies. He simply doesn't wake up. The infection spread to his blood, Makoa explains, examining the body. Death would have come whether you'd thrown him overboard or not, but the coincidence, Keone's proposal followed by a death that reduces mouths to feed, is not lost on anyone. You watch your crew carefully as you perform the burial rites, wrapping the body in sealskin and committing it to the ocean. Some men look relieved, others look ashamed. Keone looks vindicated. After the burial, you increase fishing efforts. You trail lines behind the canoe at all times, using scraps of seal meat as bait. The catch is sporadic, a fish here, a fish there, but it's something. Tao proves surprisingly skilled, catching 3 fish in one afternoon, using a method involving his hands and patience you didn't know teenagers possessed. On day 5, the day you should run completely out of food, you encounter a massive school of small fish. They're fleeing something, churning the surface of the water silver. Your crew grabs nets, baskets, anything that can scoop, and you harvest frantically. In 20 minutes, you catch enough fish to feed the crew for 3 days. Then you see what they're fleeing from. A pod of orca, killer whales, their distinctive black and white patterns visible as they hunt. One of the massive creatures surfaces 30 feet from your canoe, its eye seemingly fixed on you. For a terrifying moment, you think it will attack. Orcas have been known to overturn canoes, to drown sailors. But it simply watches, then dives, and the pod moves away, following the fish school. The gods show mercy, Makoa whispers. Perhaps. Or perhaps you've just been lucky. But you'll take luck over divine intervention any day. You have food again. You have hope again. You have a chance. With bellies full of fish, morale improves dramatically. The crew talks and jokes again, instead of sitting in grim silence. Even the man with the head injury seems to improve slightly, managing to paddle for short periods before needing rest. You allow yourself to believe, truly believe, that you might actually survive this. The water continues to warm as you sail north. After weeks of cold, the merely cool air feels tropical. Men shed their sealskin cloaks, revealing bodies marked by the journey. Scars from frostbite, from injuries, from the 1,000 small cuts that come from weeks at sea in brutal conditions. Everyone has lost weight. Some men are skeletal. But they're alive, and that counts for everything. Makoa announces that you're approaching the Great Current, the ocean river that flows northeast toward Polynesia. If you can catch it, it will carry you home with minimal paddling. The news sparks celebration. Men break into traditional songs, their voices carrying across the empty ocean. But that night, another storm comes. This one is different from the Antarctic tempest. Warmer, yes, but more violent. The waves don't just lift and drop the canoe. They throw it, spinning it, tumbling it like a child's toy. Lightning cracks across the sky, illuminating mountains of water that tower above your vessel. Thunder drowns out all attempts at communication. You simply hold on and pray to every god you know. A wave catches Tao. You see him lifted off the canoe deck, see his eyes widen in terror, see his mouth open in a scream you can't hear over the storm. Without thinking, you let go of the steering oar and lunge for him. Your hand catches his wrist just as he goes over the side. The sudden weight nearly pulls you overboard too, but Makoa grabs your legs, and together you haul the boy back into the canoe. When you look back for the steering oar, it's gone. Swept away in the chaos. Without the steering oar, the canoe is at the mercy of wind and waves. You tumble through the storm like driftwood, spinning, rotating, taking on water. Men bail frantically, but the waves come faster than you can empty the hulls. The canoe sits lower and lower in the water, dangerously close to being swamped entirely. Keone takes charge of organizing a human rudder. Men hanging off the stern, using their bodies as a makeshift steering mechanism. It's crude, exhausting, and barely effective, but it's better than nothing. Slowly, painfully, you manage to turn the canoe's bow into the waves instead of taking them broadside. The storm rages for 6 hours. When it finally passes, you count your losses again. 2 more men gone, swept overboard despite being lashed to the canoe. One of your remaining sealskin cloaks, torn away by the wind. Half the fish you caught washed out of the hulls by the waves, and the canoe itself has developed a crack in one hull. Not large, but it's leaking. Men take turns stuffing the crack with torn fabric and bailing the water that seeps through. But you're alive. 29 men, a cracked canoe, and a few days of food. You should be dead a dozen times over, yet you persist. Makoa does another star reading. We're in the current, he announces with tired triumph. We're being carried northeast. If the canoe holds together, if we get no more major storms, we could reach the outer islands in 2 weeks. Maybe 3. 2 weeks. You look at your crew, exhausted, injured, diminished, but not broken. Not yet. 2 weeks seems both impossibly far and tantalizingly close. We make repairs, you order. We fish. We sail. And we go home. For the first time, you say it without doubt. You're going home. Not all of you, perhaps, but some of you. Enough to tell the story. The days that follow are a test of pure endurance. Every dawn brings new challenges. The crack in the hull widens, requiring constant repacking and bailing. Fish become harder to catch as you move into different waters. Men develop saltwater sores that won't heal, becoming infected and painful. But you keep moving north, carried by the current, paddling when possible, resting when necessary. On day 9 after the second storm, you see something that makes your heart leap. A bird. Not a seabird, but a land bird. A small, colourful thing that lands on the canoe's prow, exhausted from flight. Where there are land birds, there is land, possibly close. The crew's energy surges. Men who could barely lift paddles find strength to pull hard. You sail through the night, guided by stars and hope, searching the horizon for any sign of land. Dawn reveals your prize, an island, small, green, with a white sand beach and palm trees swaying in the breeze. You've reached Polynesia. Not your home, but close enough. You've crossed the Antarctic Ocean and survived. The landing is chaotic. Men leap from the canoe before it's even fully beached, stumbling onto sand, falling to their knees, weeping with relief. Some kiss the ground. Others simply collapse, too exhausted to do more than breathe. You help pull the damaged canoe ashore, then join your crew on the beach, sitting heavily on sand that feels impossibly soft and warm after months on ice and water. Tao sits beside you, the young man who saved you. "Thank you," he says quietly, "for letting me come. For not throwing me overboard when times got hard." You look at him, this boy who's become a warrior, who's seen things no one so young should see. "Thank you for proving Keone wrong," you reply, "for showing that mercy isn't weakness." The island is inhabited. Small population, maybe 50 people, but they're Polynesian, distant cousins, speaking a dialect you can mostly understand. They see your damaged canoe, your skeletal crew, and immediately offer help. Food, water, shelter. They ask no questions, simply provide. That first meal, fresh fruit, roasted fish, coconut water, tastes like a fever dream. Your stomach, shrunken from weeks of near starvation, can only handle small portions. But those small portions feel like feasts. Men cry while eating. Others laugh hysterically. The emotional release is overwhelming. The village elder, a woman named Wahin with grey hair and kind eyes, listens to your story that night. You tell her everything. The storm that pushed you south, the ice, Hina's people, the battles, the deaths, the impossible voyage home. She listens without interrupting, her face grave. When you finish, she's silent for a long moment. "Other canoes have come," she says finally, "over the years. Always from the south, always damaged, always with fewer men than they started with. The Southern Ocean is cursed. It eats men and breaks their minds." "How many canoes?" you ask. "In my lifetime? 5. Maybe 6. She looks at your crew, scattered around the village, eating and resting. "You brought back more men than most. Usually, it's 1 or 2 survivors. Sometimes none. Just wreckage washes ashore. You think about the bones on the island, about the carved warning, about all the voyagers that went too far south and never returned. We need to warn people," you say. "Make sure no one else makes our mistake." Wahin shakes her head sadly. "Warnings don't work. Young men always think they'll be different, that they'll be the ones to find the legendary fishing grounds or discover new lands. And so they sail south, and most never return." The voyage from the island to Rapa Nui takes 18 days. 18 days of familiar sailing, warm waters, predictable winds, stars that guide you true. After the Antarctic hell, it feels like a pleasure cruise. Your crew paddles with strong strokes, sings traditional songs, talks about the families waiting for them. But the Antarctic has left its marks. Makoa sometimes stares at the water with haunted eyes, seeing things that aren't there. Keone wakes screaming several nights, reliving battles on the ice. Tao, despite his youth, has developed the 1,000-yard stare of a veteran who's seen too much. And you touch your blade constantly, reflexively, even when there's no threat. You spend the voyage deciding what to tell people. Do you mention Hinna's people, the human bones, the choices you made, the lives lost? Or do you craft a simpler story, one about exploration and ice and a harrowing journey home? Makoa settles it for you one evening. Tell the truth, he says. All of it. What we did, what we became, what we had to do to survive. If we lie, if we make it sound noble and glorious, then young idiots will try to repeat our journey. But if we tell them how we ate raw seal organs in the freezing dark, how we watched our friends go mad and die, how we almost became cannibals ourselves, maybe that will actually stop them. He's right. The truth is your best weapon against future tragedies. So you practice telling the story. All of it. Leaving nothing out. By the time Rapa Nui appears on the horizon, that familiar silhouette of volcanic peaks, you have the tale refined to its brutal essence. Your daughter is 9 years old now. You left when she was 7. You wonder if she'll recognize you. You wonder if you'll recognize yourself in her eyes. The landing at Rapa Nui is nothing like the landing on the small island. There's no joy, no celebration, only shock and grief. The families who gather on the beach are looking for 40 men. You've brought back 26. The 14 missing represent sons, fathers, brothers, husbands. You see your wife in the crowd. She's holding Leilani's hand. Your daughter has grown taller, thinner, her face more mature than when you left. She sees you and her eyes widen, but she doesn't run to you. She's uncertain, perhaps not quite remembering, perhaps sensing the change in you. You beach the canoe and step onto the sand of home. The crowd surges forward, desperate for information. Where is Manu? Where is Pele? Where is Koa? The questions come like waves, and you have no good answers except dead. Lost to the ice. I'm sorry. The wailing begins. Women collapse on the beach, tearing at their hair. Children cry for fathers who will never return. The celebration of your return transforms into a funeral for the lost. You stand in the center of it, bearing witness, accepting the grief and anger directed at you. You're the captain. You led them south. Their deaths are your responsibility. That night, after the initial grief has spent itself, the village elders call a meeting. You sit before them and tell your story. Every detail, every horror, every choice. You tell them about the ice that stretches beyond imagination, about Hinna's people and their descent into madness, about the battles, about the storms, about the impossible voyage home. You place Wahine's tiki on the ground between you and the elders. The Southern Ocean is cursed, you say. It's beautiful and terrible, and it eats men. We were lucky to survive. Others won't be. No one should ever sail that far south. The elders listen in silence. When you finish, the eldest among them, a man named Hotu who's been navigating these waters for 60 years, speaks. We've heard stories like yours before. Men who sailed too far and came back broken. But the sea calls to young men. It always has. It always will. Then let this story call louder, you reply. After the elder meeting, you finally go home. Your house looks smaller than you remember, more fragile. Your wife, Mele, embraces you carefully as if you might break. Leilani watches from the doorway, still uncertain. Come here, little one, you say softly, kneeling down to her level. She approaches slowly, studying your face. You look different, she says. Older. Sad. I am different, you admit. The journey changed me. But I'm still your father. I still love you more than the stars. She touches the scars on your hands, frostbite marks, rope burns, cuts that healed poorly. Did it hurt? Yes, but thinking of you made it hurt less. Finally, she hugs you, and something tight in your chest loosens. You hold your daughter and let yourself cry. The first real tears since Hinna disappeared beneath the ice. Melee joins the embrace, and for a moment, you're just a family again, not a captain bearing the weight of 14 deaths. But that night, you can't sleep in your own bed. The stillness is wrong. The warmth is wrong. You keep expecting the floor to rock beneath you. Keep listening for ice cracking or storms approaching. Around midnight, you give up and go outside, sitting under the stars, finding comfort in their familiar patterns. Tao finds you there, the young man who you saved, who became a warrior, who survived impossible odds. He sits beside you without speaking, and you share the silence. Two people who've been to the edge of the world and returned, fundamentally changed. Will it ever feel normal again? He asks eventually. I don't know, you answer honestly. Maybe we're not supposed to feel normal. Maybe carrying this, remembering them, honoring what we survived. Maybe that's our purpose now. Tao considers this, then nods. I can live with that. If I must. We must, you say. We're the ones who came back. We owe it to those who didn't. The days become weeks. You try to return to normal life, fishing, teaching navigation, helping with village tasks. But everything feels hollow, pointless. You've seen ice mountains the size of islands. You've fought for your life on frozen battlefields. Catching tuna in warm waters feels like a child's game. The other survivors struggle too. Makoa drinks kava more than he should, trying to silence the voices only he can hear. Keone picks fights with other men over minor slights, channeling his restless violence somewhere, anywhere. Several men simply sit on the beach for hours, staring south, unable to fully leave the journey behind. But Tao adapts. Somehow, the youngest among you finds a way forward. He apprentices with the village canoe builders, channeling his experience into creation rather than dwelling in memory. You watch him work and envy his resilience. 1 month after your return, a young navigator approaches you. His name is Hero, barely 20, full of ambition and confidence. Teach me, he says. Teach me to be a great navigator like you, to sail where no one has sailed. You look at him, so young, so eager, so foolish, and you see yourself before the ice. You don't want what I have, you tell him. I want to be remembered, he insists. I want to discover new lands, to have stories told about me. You're tempted to refuse him outright, but you remember Wahine's words. Stories last longer than warnings. So instead, you agree to teach him, but not how to sail south, how to survive, how to read weather, how to navigate by stars, how to lead men through impossible situations. And with every lesson, you weave in the story of ice and death, making sure he understands that glory and tragedy are the same coin. Navigation isn't about discovery, you tell him during one lesson. It's about bringing your crew home alive. Everything else is ego. 3 months after your return, a ceremony is held for the lost men. 14 carved stones are placed on the beach, each one representing a fallen crew member. Families gather to speak about their lost loved ones, to sing mourning songs, to offer prayers to guide their spirits home. You're expected to speak. As captain, it's your responsibility. You stand before the stones, before the grieving families, and you speak the names. Each one carries a memory. Kai, who died in the first battle with Hinna's people. Lono, who went mad from the cold. The two swept away in the second storm. All 14 names, spoken clearly, remembered publicly. They died far from home, you say, in a place of ice and darkness, where humans were never meant to go. They died because I led them there, because I was arrogant enough to think we could conquer the unknown ocean. Your voice breaks, but you continue. I can't bring them back. I can't undo my choices. All I can do is remember them, honor them, and make sure their deaths weren't meaningless. You look at the gathered crowd. These stones stand as warnings. The sea gives and the sea takes. The ice at the world's edge is beautiful and deadly. These 14 men learned that truth with their lives. Let their sacrifice teach us respect for the ocean's power, humility in the face of the unknown, and wisdom to know when exploration becomes foolishness. The ceremony ends with traditional songs. You place flower garlands on each stone, touching each one, private apologies that only the dead can hear. Leilani watches you, understanding more than a child should about loss and responsibility. That night, Mele holds you while you shake with silent sobs. You brought 26 home, she whispers. 26 men who would have died with the others if not for your choices. That matters too. You want to believe her. Some nights you almost do. 6 months pass. The memorial stones become part of the landscape, visited regularly by families, decorated with fresh flowers and offerings. The village slowly heals, though the scars remain. Widows remarry. Children grow up without fathers. Life, stubborn and persistent, continues. Your relationship with Leilani deepens. She asks questions about the journey, and you answer honestly, within reason. You don't tell her about the human bones, about how close you came to crossing certain lines. But you tell her about the ice, about the seals, about navigating by stars in endless twilight. She listens with wide eyes, absorbing your words like a scholar. Will you go on another voyage? She asks one evening. Yes, you answer, but never south again, only to islands we know, on routes we've sailed before, safe journeys. That sounds boring, she says with a child's brutal honesty. You laugh, the first real laugh in months. Boring is good. Boring means everyone comes home. Your student hero proves surprisingly dedicated. He learns quickly, memorizes star patterns and current directions, practices navigation until his hands blister from rope work. But more importantly, he listens to the warnings. The stories of ice and death sink in. You see it in how he checks equipment twice, how he prepares for worst-case scenarios, how he leads practice voyages with caution rather than bravado. You've made him paranoid, Makoa observes, watching Hero triple-check sail lashings before a simple fishing expedition. I've made him careful, you correct. There's a difference. Makoa grunts. He's drinking less now, functioning better. But he still has episodes. Moments where he sees things, hears voices from the ice. You've learned to recognize the signs, to guide him through the worst of it. The survivors have formed an unspoken bond, understanding each other's struggles without needing to explain. You're all marked by the journey. Some scars are visible, others run deeper than skin. 1 year after your return, a visiting navigator from distant islands arrives at Rapa Nui. His name is Tamati, and he's heard rumors of your journey. He requests a meeting, bringing gifts of fine tapa cloth and shell ornaments as signs of respect. I want to hear the true story, he says directly, not the legend that's already spreading across the islands. Not the tale of heroes conquering the ice, the real story, what actually happened. You like his honesty. You invite him to your home, offer him food and kava, and spend an entire evening telling the unvarnished truth. Tamati listens without interrupting, his experienced navigator's mind processing every detail. The currents, the ice formations, the temperature changes, the psychological toll. When you finish, He sits in silence for a long time. "I've sailed most of the Pacific," he says finally, "from Hawaii to Aotearoa. I thought I'd seen everything the ocean could offer. But this..." He shakes his head. "This is something else. A barrier. The edge of the navigable world. Will you share this?" you ask. "Will you tell other navigators?" "Yes, but I fear it won't stop everyone. Some men need to see the ice themselves, need to test themselves against it." He looks at you carefully. "How many would you say will die if navigators keep trying to go south?" You think about the bones on the island, about Hinna's doomed expedition, about your own lost crew members. Dozens, maybe hundreds over the generations, until either the stories grow strong enough to stop them, or everyone who tries dies and takes the knowledge with them. Tamati nods grimly. "Then we tell the story everywhere. Make it so vivid, so terrible, that even the bravest think twice." He raises his kava cup. "To the fallen, to the survivors, to the story that might save others." You drink with him, hoping he's right, knowing he might not be. Tamati stays on Rapa Nui for 2 weeks, interviewing all the survivors. He speaks with Makoa about navigation in ice fields, with Keone about combat in extreme cold, with Tau about youth resilience and adaptation. Each survivor tells their version, and Tamati collects them all, building a comprehensive picture of the Antarctic voyage. Before he leaves, he shares what he's learned. "The story is spreading faster than I expected," he tells you. "Other navigators who went south and returned have started speaking. There's a sailor from Tahiti who reached the ice 3 years ago, lost half his crew. Another from Samoa who turned back when he saw the first icebergs. Your journey was the deepest penetration, but you're not the only ones who tried. This surprises you. You thought your expedition was unique, special in its foolishness. But apparently, the Southern Ocean has been claiming lives for years, quietly, with survivors too ashamed or traumatized to speak until now." "We're creating a map," Tamati continues, "a boundary map showing where the ice begins, where the safe sailing ends. Every navigator who returns alive adds to it. Eventually, we'll have a complete picture of the southern limit. A line no one should cross. It's ambitious. It's practical. It might actually work. How can I help?" you ask. "Keep teaching. Keep telling the story. And if you're willing, draw me detailed charts of your route. Currents, ice positions, wind patterns. Everything you remember. Future navigators need to know what they're facing if they ignore the warnings." You agree immediately. Over the next week, you work with Tamati, creating the most detailed charts of Antarctic waters any Polynesian has ever made. You mark the location of the seal island, the areas of worst ice, the storm's paths. You create a map of danger, a guide to survival, if survival becomes necessary. 2 years after your return, you take your first voyage since the Antarctic journey. It's a simple route, to a neighboring island, 3 days each way, waters you've sailed dozens of times. But the night before departure, you can't sleep. The old anxiety returns. What if a storm comes? What if you don't return? What if you fail your crew again? Mele finds you on the beach, staring at the prepared canoe. "You're afraid," she says simply. "Yes, no point denying it." "Good." Fear makes you careful. It's when you weren't afraid that you sailed too far south. Her wisdom cuts through your anxiety. She's right. The fear isn't weakness, it's knowledge, earned through suffering. You embrace it, use it to triple-check your preparations, to brief your crew thoroughly, to plan for every contingency. The voyage goes perfectly. Calm winds, clear skies, no surprises. You reach the neighboring island, trade goods, and return home without incident. It's boring. It's beautiful. Everyone comes home. Leilani is waiting on the beach when you return. She's 11 now, growing into a young woman, smart and curious. "Was it a good voyage?" she asks. "It was boring," you reply with a grin. She grins back, understanding. "Good." That night you sleep peacefully for the first time in 2 years. The ocean has given you a gift, a successful journey that proves you can still navigate, can still lead, can still bring people home safely. The Antarctic didn't break you permanently. It changed you, scarred you, taught you. But it didn't destroy you. Over the following months you take more voyages. Each one builds confidence. Each successful return adds to the healing. You're not the navigator you were before the ice. You're more cautious, more humble, more aware of the ocean's power. But perhaps that makes you better, not worse. 5 years after the Antarctic voyage, you're recognized as one of the master navigators of Rapa Nui. Not because of your journey to the ice. That's remembered more as a cautionary tale than an achievement, but because of your perfect safety record since. 30 voyages, 30 successful returns, 0 lives lost. It's the opposite of glory, and it's exactly what you wanted. Hero, your student, has become a skilled navigator in his own right. He's preparing for his first solo captaincy, a trading mission to a distant island. You inspect his canoe with him, checking every detail, asking hard questions. What if a storm hits? What if someone gets injured? What if you're blown off course? For each question he has an answer, a good answer. He's learned well. More importantly, he's learned to respect the ocean's power while not fearing it into paralysis. It's a balance you wish you'd had at his age. You'll do fine, you tell him finally. Better than fine. You'll bring everyone home, and that's what matters. He grins, excited and nervous. I hope I make you proud. You already have. Just by being careful, by valuing lives over glory, you've made me proud. Makoa, standing nearby, watches the exchange with satisfaction. He's mostly recovered from his ice-induced madness, though he still has bad days. He's become a teacher too, passing on navigation knowledge to the next generation, ensuring the lessons of the Antarctic voyage live on in practical form. That evening, the village holds a celebration for Hero's first captaincy. There's food, music, dancing. During the festivities, Leilani, now 16 and beautiful, approaches you. I want to learn navigation, she announces. Properly. To become a navigator like you. Your first instinct is to refuse. The ocean has taken so much from you, shown you such horrors. How can you send your daughter into that world? But then you remember. Careful navigation, respectful navigation, brings people home. You take 3 days to consider Leilani's request. You discuss it with Mele, who reminds you that denying your daughter opportunities because of your own fears isn't protection, it's control. You speak with Makoa, who says female navigators are rare but not unheard of, and often more cautious than men, which might make them better. You talk with Tao, now a skilled sailor himself, who points out that Leilani has been watching and learning for years anyway. You might as well teach her properly. Finally, you agree. But on your terms. You'll learn everything, you tell her. Not just the glory parts, reading stars and riding currents. You'll learn about storms, about fear, about the decisions that haunt you for years. You'll learn why boring voyages are good voyages. You'll hear every story from the Antarctic journey, including the parts I've never told anyone. Leilani meets your eyes steadily. I want to know all of it, the truth, not the legend. So you teach her, and in teaching her, you finally process parts of the journey you've kept locked away. You tell her about Hina's desperate swim and how you watched her drown. About Keone's suggestion to kill the weak crew members. About the human bones on the island and the warning carved in stone. About the young warrior Tao who you almost refused, and how that decision would have killed someone who became like a son to you. Leilani listens to all of it without flinching. When you finish the hardest stories, she says simply, "You made impossible choices and brought as many people home as you could." That's what a good captain does. Her absolution means more than any ceremony, any honor, any recognition. Your daughter understands. Finally, someone in your family truly understands what you've carried. Leilani proves to be a natural navigator. Within months, she can read star patterns as well as students who've trained for years. She has your spatial memory, your instinct for currents and wind. But she also has something you lacked at that age: humility. She knows what the ocean can do. She's grown up hearing the stories, watching survivors struggle, understanding that the sea gives and takes without mercy. 10 years after your Antarctic journey, a gathering of navigators from across Polynesia convenes on Rapa Nui. They come to share knowledge, to update the maps, to teach and learn. Tamati is there, now an old man but still sharp. So are navigators from Hawaii, Tahiti, Samoa, the Cook Islands, Aotearoa. It's the largest gathering of master navigators anyone can remember. You're asked to speak, to tell the story one more time for those who haven't heard it firsthand. You stand before over 100 navigators, the best sailors in the Pacific, and you tell them about the ice. But this time, Makoa speaks too, and Keone, and Tao, and even some of the quieter survivors who've never spoken publicly before. Each one adds their perspective, their memories, their lessons. Together, you create a complete picture of what happened, what was lost, what was learned. When you finish, the gathering is silent. Then an ancient navigator from Hawaii stands. He's easily 70, with white hair and hands gnarled from decades of rope work. "In my grandfather's time," he says, "men sailed south seeking glory. Most never returned. Those who did never spoke of what they saw. You have broken that silence. You have turned tragedy into knowledge. The ocean thanks you for this gift, even if it cannot say so." The gathered navigators perform a traditional chant of respect, their voices rising together. You stand among them, a survivor, a teacher, a cautionary tale made useful. After the gathering, navigators approach you privately. Some share their own stories of pushing too far, of barely surviving, of losing crews to hubris. Others ask technical questions about Antarctic navigation. A few young navigators still talk about attempting the journey themselves. The story hasn't killed all ambition, but even they approach it with newfound respect. One navigator from Tahiti, a woman named Vi, stays behind after others leave. She's middle-aged, respected, with scars that speak of hard voyages. "I lost my brother to the southern ice," she says quietly, 15 years ago. "He sailed with 7 others. None returned. I always wondered what happened, imagined the worst. Hearing your story, I still don't know his specific fate, but I understand now. I understand what he faced. Thank you for that." You clasp her hand, sharing the grief of lost sailors, the bond of survivors and mourners alike. "The ice takes everyone it catches," you tell her. "Your brother died among others who sought the same thing he did. He wasn't alone in his final moments." That might not comfort much, but it's true. She nods, tears tracking down her weathered cheeks. It helps more than you know. These private conversations continue for days. The gathering becomes not just a sharing of technical knowledge, but a grieving space for families of lost navigators. A community of those touched by the Southern Ocean's cruelty. You realize the story is larger than your specific journey. It's about every crew that pushed too far, every family that waited for sailors who never returned, every generation learning the same hard lessons. By the gathering's end, the navigators agree to create a formal boundary. No expedition south of a certain latitude will receive support or blessing from the navigation community. It's not a law. The ocean recognizes no laws. But it's a cultural barrier, a collective wisdom enforced through shame and respect. 15 years after the Antarctic voyage, Leilani captains her first solo expedition. You stand on the beach, watching her canoe disappear over the horizon, and the fear is still there. It will always be there. But so is pride. She's ready. You've taught her everything you know, and she's learned from both your successes and failures. Makoa stands beside you, even older now, leaning on a walking stick. Strange, he muses. We survived the ice so she could sail safely to Tahiti. All those deaths, all that suffering, so the next generation could learn what not to do. Is that enough, you ask? Is that worth 14 lives? No, Makoa says honestly. Nothing is worth that. But it's something. It's all we have. Leilani returns 12 days later, right on schedule. Her voyage was perfect, good winds, calm seas, successful trading. She didn't need to make impossible choices or watch crew members die. She was bored, in the best possible way. That night, you update the maps one final time, adding her safe route to the growing network of known passages. The Pacific is being charted comprehensively now, with safe routes clearly marked and dangerous areas honestly noted. Future navigators will have advantages you never did. Accumulated knowledge, shared wisdom, clear warnings. Tao, now in his 30s with a family of his own, visits that evening. His oldest son wants to learn navigation, and Tao wants your blessing before beginning teaching. You give it gladly. The boy is careful, thoughtful, showing none of the recklessness that sent you south. The ice changed us, Tao says, watching his son study star charts. But it didn't have to break us. We chose to use it, to make something from the suffering. That matters. You nod, hoping he's right. Hoping that in 50 years, in 100, navigators will see the marked boundaries and respect them, will value boring, safe voyages over glorious, deadly ones. 20 years after the Antarctic journey, you're recognized as the eldest living master navigator of the Pacific. You're old now, body worn by decades of ocean work and that one catastrophic voyage. Your hands shake, your eyes are clouding, but your mind remains sharp, packed with knowledge no one else possesses. A young scholar from a distant island arrives, asking to document your life. He wants to write down the stories, preserve them for future generations beyond oral tradition. You agree, but only if he writes everything, the failures as much as the successes, the deaths as much as the survivals. You spend weeks with the scholar, telling him about your childhood, your early voyages, the Antarctic disaster, the recovery, the teaching years. He writes it all on prepared bark cloth, creating a permanent record. When you describe Hinna drowning, he pauses. This part, he says carefully. It reflects poorly on you. You could have tried to save her. I could have died trying to save her, you correct. And then my crew would have no captain. That's the truth. Write it. He writes it. The scholar also interviews Makoa, Keone, Tao, Leilani, and other survivors and students. He creates a comprehensive account of the Antarctic voyage and its aftermath. When he finishes, he has a document dozens of pages long, the most detailed account of any Polynesian voyage ever recorded. This will be copied and spread across the islands, he tells you. Your story will outlive you by generations. Good, you reply. Maybe it'll save some lives. That night, you have trouble sleeping. Not from nightmares, those have faded with time, but from a deep satisfaction. You've done what you could. You've turned tragedy into wisdom, death into knowledge, suffering into teaching. 26 men came home. And because they did, hundreds of future navigators might be saved. It's not redemption, but it's something. 25 years after the Antarctic voyage, Mokoa dies. He passes peacefully in his sleep, his mind finally at rest after decades of occasional hauntings from the ice. You speak at his funeral, honoring him not just as a navigator, but as a survivor, a friend, a teacher. You talk about how he saved Tau when the boy was swept overboard, how his navigation brought the damaged canoe home, how his insistence on telling the truth shaped the legacy of the journey. His death hits hard. He was the last person who truly understood what happened in the ice, who shared your nightmares and your guilt. With him gone, you're more alone in your memories, but you're not entirely alone. Keone is still alive, weathered and gruff but healthy. Tau is there, now a master navigator himself. And Leilani, brilliant, careful Leilani, has become what you hoped. A better navigator than you ever were, skilled without being reckless, confident without being arrogant. 3 months after Mokoa's death, Keone approaches you. I'm getting old, he says bluntly. We all are. The survivors are dying off. Soon it'll just be Tau, and he was barely more than a boy when we went south. Someone needs to make a final monument, something permanent, something that lasts. You understand immediately. The memorial stones for the 14 dead are weathering, cracking, fading. They need something more. Working with village stone carvers, you design a proper monument. A large carved stone depicting a double-hulled canoe surrounded by ice, with the names of all 14 lost crew members, plus the names of survivors, carved in traditional script. The carving takes 6 months. When it's complete, it's unveiled in a ceremony attended by hundreds. Families of the lost, survivors, students, navigators from distant islands. They all gather to witness the permanent memorialization of the Antarctic voyage. 30 years after the Antarctic voyage, you're 71 years old and fading. Your body has betrayed you, the joints seized by pain, the eyes nearly blind, the lungs struggling with each breath. But your mind persists, trapped in a failing vessel, still sailing. Leilani visits daily, bringing her children, your grandchildren, to see you. The oldest, a girl named Moana, is 14 and already showing navigation talent. You teach her what you can, though your voice is weak and your words sometimes wander. Tell me about the ice, great-grandfather, she asks one afternoon. You've told the story hundreds of times, but it never gets easier. Still, you tell it again. For her, for the future. The ice was beautiful, you begin, your voice barely a whisper, like mountains made of frozen stars. But beauty doesn't mean safety. The most dangerous things are often the most beautiful. Remember that. She listens with the same intensity Leilani showed at her age. The pattern continues. The knowledge passes down. Tau visits too, now 53 and grey himself. He brings news from other islands. The boundary is holding. Few navigators attempt the southern journey anymore. The cultural prohibition, strengthened by 3 decades of stories and warnings, has become tradition. Lives are being saved, though you'll never know how many. We'll never meet the sailors who live because of your suffering. We did it, Tau tells you. We turned horror into wisdom. The ice hasn't claimed anyone in over a decade. Not from our islands, anyway. You smile. though it hurts. Good. That's good. That night, you dream of the ice. But for the first time in 30 years, it's not a nightmare. You're standing on the frozen shore, and Makoa is there, young and healthy, and the 14 lost crew members, and Hina, no longer mad or scarred. They're all there, and they're not angry. They're just there, waiting, patient. You die 3 days later, surrounded by family. Your last words are to Leilani. Keep teaching. Keep telling the story. Don't let them forget, she promises. She keeps that promise. Your funeral is the largest Rapa Nui has seen in generations. Navigators come from across the Pacific to honor you, not as a hero but as a teacher, a survivor, a man who turned his greatest failure into his most important lesson. The funeral ceremony lasts 3 days, with speakers sharing stories not just about your Antarctic voyage, but about the 30 years after, about the lives saved through your warnings, about the students you taught, about the careful, humble navigation you championed. Keone speaks, now the last living survivor from the original 40. He's 86, bent and weathered, but his voice is still strong. Kaimana led us into hell, he says bluntly, but he also led us out, and he made sure that hell served a purpose. 14 men died, but how many hundreds have lived because of the lessons those deaths taught? We can't know. We can never know. But we can honor them by continuing to teach, to warn, to remember. Your body is cremated on a ceremonial canoe, not the original vessel from the Antarctic journey. That was too damaged to preserve, but a new one built in traditional style, decorated with carvings depicting your life's voyages. As the flames rise and the smoke carries your spirit skyward, Leilani places the carved tiki from Wahine at the monument's base. Safe passage, Father, she whispers. You've earned your rest. The community performs the traditional navigator's chant, their voices rising and falling like waves. The sound carries across the water, across the years, across the icebound memories. You sail one final time, not south to danger, but forward to peace. 50 years after the Antarctic voyage, the story has become legend. The details have shifted slightly in the telling. Some versions make Kaimana more heroic, others more cautionary, but all versions preserve the core truth. The southern ice is death, and glory matters less than bringing your crew home. Leilani, now 66 and a master navigator herself, teaches at the great navigation school that has been established on Rapa Nui. Students come from across the Pacific to learn from her and other master teachers. The curriculum includes technical skills, but also history, ethics, and the stories of failed voyages alongside successful ones. Moana, your great-granddaughter, is now 40 and captaining trading routes between islands. She's careful, skilled, respected. Everything you hoped a navigator could be. She's never sailed south of the boundary, never attempted glory for glory's sake, never lost a crew member to recklessness. She represents the successful culmination of your legacy. The Antarctic voyage is taught as the central case study in what not to do. New students visit the monument, read the names of the lost, hear the stories from those who knew the survivors. The carved stone has weathered 50 years, but remains clear, its message permanent. Tao died 5 years ago, at 73, still telling the story, still warning against hubris. Keone followed him a year later. The last survivor is gone, but the knowledge survives, carried forward by students and children, by navigators who never met you but know your story, by a culture that has learned to respect the ocean's boundaries. In distant ports, when young navigators talk of pushing south, seeking the ice, testing themselves against the ultimate challenge, older sailors stop them. Listen to the story of Kaimana, they say. Listen and understand. And they listen. Not all of them, but enough. More than enough. 100 years after Kaimana's voyage, the Antarctic expedition is mythology. The specific details have blurred. Some versions have 20 crew members, others 60. Some say the journey took 6 months, others 2 years. But the essential truth remains. The southern ice is forbidden, not by law, but by collective wisdom. A historian, studying ancient voyages, investigates the monument, now weathered almost smooth by a century of wind and salt spray. She can barely read the names anymore, but scholars have recorded them, preserved them in written archives that span the Pacific. She traces her fingers over the faint carvings of the ice-bound canoe and wonders what it was truly like to sail beyond the edge of the known world and return changed. She interviews the oldest navigators, asking if anyone still attempts the southern journey. Sometimes, one ancient sailor tells her. Every few generations, someone ignores the warnings. They don't return. The ice keeps them. It always does. Why do they go? If the story is so well known, the old navigator shrugs. The same reason Kaimana went: curiosity, ambition, the belief that they'll be different. The ice doesn't care about belief. But the frequency has dropped dramatically. Before Kaimana's voyage, dozens of expeditions went south each generation, most lost. After his voyage, and its legendary telling, perhaps 1 or 2 every 50 years. The story saved lives. Hundreds of lives, maybe thousands, over the course of a century. The sun sets over Rapa Nui, casting long shadows from the Moai statues and the ancient monument. Somewhere in the south, the ice still gleams, beautiful and deadly, waiting for the next navigator who thinks they can conquer it. But tonight, the canoes in Rapa Nui's harbour sit safely at anchor. The navigators sleep peacefully, their children safe, their crews intact. Tonight, and for many nights to come, Kaimana's warning holds. The story endures.